Hi everyone, this is Lada from astrolada.com. Today I'm here with astrologer Philip Daniel Miles, and we're talking about the Saturn Pluto Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn, which is peaking in 2020. This is part of the Astrolada Bonanza, which we're giving all important different views from different astrologers of all important events up to 2021, and it seems that this will be the most dramatic event of all. Pluto Jupiter Saturn conjunct in Capricorn. Hi Phil.
Hello Lada, thank you for having me on this very exciting Astro Lada Bonanza.
Thank you for agreeing to do this really complicated piece. I mean, like, I'm afraid to touch it even because it's so intense. Pluto
Well, what we do is, as you say, it's a complex matter. There's lots of different information, so I'll just bring it up and we'll see what order it comes, and hopefully it's useful to the audience and they can gather some use from this.
Amazing. Let's go.
So first of all, we ask what Capricorn means to us as individuals and as a society, and that is its structure, its support as individuals and as a collective. So we look for our own backbone. What have we put into our lives, into our bones, which is going to support us and carry us through all of the trials and tribulations that life throws at us? And that is exactly the same as what we look for as a society. We look to have a structure which will support us with our education, with our health, with our beliefs, with our relationships with each other as a family or as a community. You know, we look to be supported and we look to find resonance within the structure which is bringing us up, a bit like a father figure of the community. That's very much what Capricorn and Saturn represents, Saturn being the ruler of Capricorn. And so it was in 2008 when Pluto entered Capricorn, and this instantaneously saw changes in the structures of the society, of the banking system. We saw a massive collapse, and this would really bring around a lot of fear of scarcity, a lot of fear that we weren't going to be able to do what we want to do, which again is an illusion. Fear is always an illusion, especially when it's the false evidence of what's being presented that may appear real to us because we're investing in the catchy title of the fear. But when we move away to that, we come into ourselves and we're empowered. And that's the kind of structure that we want. We want to be empowered by ourselves and society. So Pluto comes in, and if there's anything that's not working, anything that's damaged, anything that's not serving us as individuals, it'll be destroyed, but it will be rebuilt. It's the tower in the tarot card, because it will fall and it will culminate and rise again in a structure which is supportive.
Yes, when the banking system collapsed, they just patched it up, and it's again working in very similar ways. So you're saying that there will be a second showdown or whatever when Pluto gets activated by Saturn and Jupiter, probably, because the old structures are still there. We saw the crisis that happened, and they're starting again to do the same. They haven't changed the system.
Yeah, well, certainly so. You're very correct. And what they do is they will cling on to the systems that have been in place for as long as possible. They'll try and fix up the banks. They'll tell you that they're going to help you with giving you free education or free health service. But really, we're not going to see the culmination of these collapses until the end of this Pluto transit and these actual tight conjunctions with the other big planets that are coming into this stellium that we've got going on, into this dance that's reshaping society.
2020 is when this culmination is coming, to the really setting up of the structures and having to change the structures now and rebuild them from the bottom.
Yes, and it's 2020 is the first time in 700-800 years since all of these planets were in the same sign, in the same conjunction, and that's in Capricorn in 1284 and 85. Wow, so that's obviously quite a long time. And this is what we see is maybe the seeds were planted for the civilization, for the world that we live in now.
to the structures and institutions that we have now. I think banking started then in that century, because this is when the Knights Templar were in full power, because this is when the Crusades were happening. And the Knights Templar were the ones that started the banking system, because they would, you know, they were the ones that would they would take money and they would give you papers for that. So this is where it started. Actually, after this conjunction, the banking system started getting implemented.
That's very, very correct. And so how poignant that it was the banks that were first to be irritated once this little last phase of this story, once this end of this cycle and beginning of a new cycle had started to be. Because, as you say, it was the banks that were coming together back in that system, but also was when they started to do birth certificates around this time. Wow. And we got the second names. We weren't all of these long names and all of these different names in the past. We just were our first names, and people knew us by that.
Astrologer or something.
Yeah. Yes, certainly. We were known by our trades, by what we had to offer for society. And it's when they gave
so what kind of indoctrinated then? We were made
straw men. We were made straw men. Which is like by giving us like a receipt when we were born and giving us a number and a second name, a surname, we became a digit, a number for the society.
Wow, and institutionalization.
Yes.
That's what started happening in the last, actually. Wow, that doesn't bode so well for this one.
Very much so. And as well, this coincides with the hoarding of information, as you say, the Knights Templar. So this is when slowly the natural information of humankind was stored away. Like our spiritual scriptures were being hoarded or burnt and rewritten. And the great teachers were being burnt at the stake, and they were being penalized, and they were being abused, and they were being ridiculed. And obviously that's no way to be, because this is a rich community of spiritual truth that we had all over the land, from what I understand, from many civilizations.
So this is when basically the Roman Church started its grip on all the information, and steely grip, and trying to control the information. So it just comes from one source. Yes, this is when they started a lot. And yeah, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I'm just trying to follow it. Yeah. So I'm
see that if we use the archetypes of the planet, you can, and the Knights Templar, for example, you can see that Pluto is a treasure chest, and the Knights Templar have a lock and key for the treasure chest, and Jupiter is all the information, and Saturn is the structure, the pamphlet that they're putting out for us. So basically, we're only getting a smidgen, only a little bit of the information, which is empowering to a certain degree. You know, the Stockholm syndrome, in the sense that if you're going to keep anybody captive, then you always give them a little bit. You always give them a little bit of what they need and what they want to keep them going, so that they can provide the energy. And this is what it is. This is all about slavery, in a sense, especially with the exploration of the land. Whether it's about the native Indians in America, or the Vedas, or even in Africa. This is a very big thing which has been swept under the carpet, which came along with the globalist elite as they were exploring the land. And they came up with different cosmology with Copernicus, which limited our belief system some even more with the indoctrination of a scientific view. That was in the 16th century. And Newton.
The whole period, how from the 12th, 13th century it started this very different development of humanity, which was much more in control through institutions, and the truth was controlled and institutionalized, and true spiritual teachers went underground, in a sense, because they were being persecuted, and how the scientific, because Capricorn is also a very materialistic sign. It was like the beginning of something very materialistic, that true spirituality started losing its, people started losing touch with true spirituality, and instead outer structures were given to them, and new scientific approach to reality. Because before, as you mentioned, our understanding of reality was geocentric, that we're the center of the world.
Exactly, yes.
That's the spiritual. Even now, spiritual teachers that are coming, they're saying this is the correct. If you have spiritual eyes and you see through it, it's geocentric, actually, the system, you know, and
Which is the root of astrology as well. Like, as you say, the Persian Empire, the Babylonian astrology, the mechanics of astrology was built with a cosmology of a plane rather than a globe. And so this was how it was much better understood. And it was almost like the entrapment of ideas is making us more of a slave race. With Copernicus and his spheres, they were sphere planets, which he prophesied were other balls, just like the Earth. And it reduced the Earth to a lower domain, which I'll touch on in just a moment with a couple of quotes. But this continued, this entrapment, with Newton and his theory of gravity, looking at all of the details and coming up with ideas that would fit how these spinning balls could work, and also how we could just be neutered from creation with Darwinism.
Like just specs.
Because Darwinism would mean that creation, that we are not source. We're not spirit beings. It's improbable and it's impossible with us, with evolution, and that was in the 19th century. I will take your question, but I just must move on because it's so relevant to go on to this quote from Sigmund Freud, a philosopher and psychologist, who largely sculpted the blueprint for the society which we're currently in now. And this is his talk. A quote from his talk that he did in 1915 to 1917 called A General Introduction into Psychoanalysis. Bear with me, I will be reading my best for you guys. So, humanity has in the course of time had to endure from the hands of science two great outrages upon its naive self-love. The first was when it realized that our Earth was not the center of the universe, but only a speck in the world system of a magnitude hardly conceivable. This is associated in our mind with the name of Copernicus, although Alexandrian doctrines taught something very similar also. The second was when biological research robbed man of his particular privilege of having been specially created and relegated him to a descendant of the animal world, implying an ineradicable animal nature to him. Yes, so obviously, I pause here, but always seeking, as you said, to go and possess something, be it a woman, be it a house, be it some land, and this was brought around by us being possessions ourselves, having the surname, being sold, being seen as a commodity, being seen as a slave race.
No longer divine, we come from animals, we're no longer special in any way. There is no spiritual meaning in life. We're just created by mechanical laws, and it's all a big coincidence that we exist at all. And that's from the last conjunction of Jupiter Saturn Pluto gradually. Wow.
That was the Big Bang. Is obviously a question mark, but this quote continues. I must continue, sorry. This transvaluation, this is a very good word, this transvaluation of the human race has been accomplished in our own time upon the instigation of Charles Darwin, Wallace, and their predecessors, and not without the violent opposition from their contemporaries. But a man's craving for grandiosity is now suffering the third and most bitter blow from present-day psychological research, which is endeavoring to prove to the ego of each one of us that he is not the master of his own house, but that he must remain content with the various scraps of information about what is going on unconsciously in his own mind, i.e., this is the limitation of information through religion, through governmental structures, through our world. We've been suppressed and we've been lied to and we've been limited. And this is really why we keep investing in things which are not serving us, whether that be ongoing TV or alcohol or partying, all of which is great in moderation. But you know where I'm going. Anyway, so we psychoanalysts were neither the first nor the only ones to propose to mankind that they should look inward. But it appears to be our lot to advocate it most insistently and support it by empirical evidence which touches every man closely. Now, I must go on very quickly because there's another person, just to back this up. This isn't just a theory. This isn't just new. This was done by a German guy called Boris Raymond, talking about Darwin and Copernicus in 1882. And this is just a different perspective. Darwin seems to be the Copernicus of the organic world. In the 16th century, Copernicus put an end to the anthropological theory by doing away with the Ptolemaic spheres and bringing Earth down to the rank of an insignificant planet. At the same time, he proved the non-existence of the so-called Empyrean, that supposed abode of the heavenly hosts, beyond the seventh sphere, although Giordano Bruno was the first who actually drew the inference. Man, however, still stood apart from the rest of animated beings, not at the top of the scale, his proper place at the top of the scale, not a man, not an animal, but like God in creation, co-creating with each other, but quite a way as a being absolutely, incomprehensibly with them. 100 years later, Descartes still held that man alone had a soul and that beasts were automata after the origin of species. All things were seen to be due to the quiet development of a few simple germs. Graduated days of creation gave place to one day on which matter in motion was created, and organic suitability was replaced by mechanical process. For as such, we may look on natural selection, and now, for the first time, man took his proper place at the head of his brethren. Though many links are still missing, we may fairly consider the knowledge of existence of primal man as the beginning of the long looked for connection between him and the anthropoids on one hand, and between them both and their common prognoses of the other. I apologize if I didn't read that very well, but basically the reason why I added that
is it because it's very complex. I don't understand it either.
Well,
basically, trying to say that humans have been robbed by from the understanding in the last 800 years of their divine origin. They've been made to feel just like pieces of material and possession, and they've been this progressive systematization and control of humanity by degrading their spirit, by degrading their freedom, and now it's all coming to a peak, to a conclusion of that cycle in some way with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Pluto. Or yes, it's gonna get worse because it's
well, I see. Basically, it's as you say, it's very much similar to the suppression of the feminine archetype as well. Like humanity is a feminine archetype. We are. So is the Earth. So we're living on a feminine archetype here, and so that's what's been suppressed. And the feminine archetype is one of creativity, and that's been suppressed. And man is able to provide inspiration and love to feed creation. And so what we're looking at is bringing that back to the forefront. Now that we're realizing that we've been not nurturing ourselves, not with substance, we can actually reincorporate this into our structures. This is a great opportunity. So yes, the hierarchy, the elite, they realize this is going on, and they're going to be like, whip, snap, whip, snap. We need to make this tighter. We need to make this 1984. We need to make this, like, we're going to have the Fifth Element. We're going to have Bruce Willis locked in a tiny little thing. Everyone's going to be in Matchbox. Everyone's going to be logging in and paying. Everyone's going to have their money tightly fixed away. But we've also got this other separate world already blossoming in front of us, which we're a part of. As spiritual community people, as astrologers, we're not taking no for an answer. I mean, obviously astrology's been rising for 100 years with its little peaks and troughs, but there's no stopping it now. But this also goes for health revolution within our diets. We've not been eating healthily because we've not been told the right food to eat. So now that education has come around in the past few decades, and people are living by example with that, they're living a plant-based diet, and they're taking the cleanses and purifying their vessels so that they can live a spiritual practice and make the changes. And also, this is an opportunity for communities to come together, to grow food together, especially with the transits that are going on. So we're moving away from, okay, well, we're a slave race, we're an entrapment, oh my, let's live in fear. And we're coming into, yes, this is our opportunity. We've all got great gifts. We've all got vocational aptitudes. We've all got a heart. We've all got a mind of our own. We don't need to listen to things that don't resonate with us. We've all got an opportunity to change the world in a way that we see fit and lead ourselves rather than be led by something that doesn't serve us.
So basically, this Capricorn conjunction can serve not only as the institutions and the governments tightening up, which they're trying to do, but we taking control, because Capricorn is about taking control and it's creating structures. So it's about, on an individual level, basically there is two parallel processes. The governments are trying to control us more and more, like you described, and it's an agenda for the last 800 years that really started kicking off then. And on the other hand, it's we starting to create our own structures independently from the governments, because Capricorn does not necessarily need to be just governments. It can be personal structures we create independently. And that's what you're talking about, creating those communities and maybe creating kind of separating from the system and creating a different system parallel to this one.
Definitely. I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to be completely isolated and living in hippie communities, although that might be very useful for some people for some phases of their experience. This is about integrating it on the grid as well. The internet, you know, is a grid around the world of connectivity, and that's the kind of thing that's brought us together and enabled this information to come together. It was previous to this in the Industrial Revolution in 1802, where we see this great mutation, this Saturn Jupiter cycle, which is actually going around in a vortex known as the Trigon cycle. Mm-hmm. And it would go around every 20 years, and they'd find themselves having a conjunction in an Earth sign. And that's now coming.
For the past 200 years, they've been always conjuncting in an Earth sign. The last time was in Taurus, actually, almost 20 years ago. And this time in an air sign, in Aquarius, for the first time.
And this is beginning a new cycle within called the air trigon. And actually, you can see this on our cosmology. If you look at the elliptical plane, they actually make a dance. They go round in a vortex fashion, following the path of the sun. And we actually look back to Hindu cosmology and regalia in their clothes as we look at all the patterns. And this is where it comes from. The dance of these archetypes across the plane really makes some beautiful patterns. So what we're looking at when we see the end of the Industrial Revolution, this Earth trigon, which brought
when it started, the Earth trigon with Jupiter and Saturn, this is when the Industrial Revolution started.
Yes, and that's lots of energy sourced from the Earth. You know, we were mining for oil and coal and gold and all of these resources.
Yeah, for 200 years now.
And what were those resources? We were told that they were limited, at least. And so that was another fear. But what we're told about air, which is now what we're moving into and what we're sourcing our energy from now, is that it's infinite, just like us. Mm-hmm. Just like you, Lada. Infinite spirit, beautiful, full of potential. There's no stopping us. And so
happening in Aquarius, the 0 degrees of Aquarius, Aquarius sign is wave, so it rules all wave technology, all wave energies that are around us. You know, so there'll be, I guess, a huge moving of resources from the Earth that it starts from 2021 towards Earth. It's happening already because there was one already in air 2081, but then another one came in 2020. The last one, the Earth, so the last push of the elite, 2020 to 2000, the year 2000 to the year 2020, the last push to force on us Earth technologies and industrial technologies and Earth exploitation. And then you're saying that now with the Saturn Jupiter in the 0 degrees of Aquarius, we're starting a new cycle.
Definitely, and as you say, you're bang on. We see it all around us already. Where I live in England, there's obviously we're surrounded by sea, and I live near a seaside called Brighton, and there's a wind farm. It's been built over the past year or so, and there's so many turbines out there, and it's amazing to see how quickly these things can come together.
Yeah, they started only in the last 20 years, kind of little by little. Last I'd say 40 something.
Yes, 1980 was when 1982 was when it started to bring around.
Air conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn.
So we look at the archetypes of Saturn and Jupiter, and we look at what they're bringing around. So they bring around philosophy of our time. They also bring around the structure of the world's religions, education system, the banks, energy resources, the expansion, because Jupiter is the expansion of our education, Saturn being a teacher, Capricorn teaching. But as I say, with this, and this is also truth, because Jupiter's truth, and it's supporting, which is structure, Saturn, and where is it? It's Aquarius. So it's our species being supported by a structure which is truthful, brought around by us. So basically, all we're doing now is we're choosing to conform to the structures that were, which will only be tightened, or we're choosing to go our own way. There's nothing stopping us but the choice. And so this is when it comes into great culmination, because we're looking at bringing around deeper understandings of ourselves, and we can use these transits to empower ourselves to make sure that we can make the moves in our lives to be in alignment with where we want to be going.
No, and Aquarius is about freedom and authenticity. So there'll be Jupiter Saturn starting this new cycle. And interesting, because if they conjunct it in Capricorn, they are both in Capricorn at the same time, but they don't conjunct there with Pluto. I would imagine that then those structures that were placed in 800 years ago would tighten even furthermore. They will be tightening, but I would imagine that 200 years it will get even worse, because the cycle of Jupiter Saturn will connect in Earth, but they're connecting in exactly in the next sign. So yes, they're together in Capricorn, but they go to the next sign, and this is in an air sign where they can join, and the power goes to the people. Aquarius is the people, the masses, the hoi polloi, and a new cycle comes of freeing people, and it's not gonna, yes, the government exactly before that will be trying to tighten even more control. You'll see more regulations, more limitations coming, but there will be a huge new wave that we can't escape, basically.
Definitely, and it's about learning not to make the same mistakes again. I mean, we've all sold ourselves short. We've all disvalued ourselves and not thought we're good enough at some point or another. And it's those small micro decisions which we make, which are being reflected in this macro. So how many times are we willing to do that to ourselves as individuals or as a society? I mean, how are we going to have our truth taken away from us? And it's about what can these energies, what can these transits do for us? This energy is supporting us to make the most of ourselves. And so by playing back into the hands of the structures which don't support us, that's very limiting for ourselves. But when we commune, when we network, when we grow into ourselves, when we come together, this is when we bring around the change. And we really do become the new Aquarian community. We lead the way before it's ready, and then we can learn from our children. I really did want to touch again, though, before I close on Ptolemy and Ptolemy, and his which was the understanding of the cosmology before it was kind of taken from us. And he had the 7 spheres of influence, the archetypes that play through each of us within our astrology chart, the 7 planets. And these are spheres of influence because there are 7 chakras. They're the voices that we have within us. They're the, oh, I want to go and have this meal, Venus. Oh, I value listening to Lada do her presentations, Venus. Oh, I love to communicate with Lada right now on this video. This is Mercury. And these are all archetypes that play through us. These are spheres of influence rather than actual balls in the sky, I would imagine. Although I think they're electromagnetic spheres of influence. These are energies, these are deities that play through us as multi-dimensional spiritual beings here on the physical plane of Earth. And I think it's very important that we share this because this was known for many, many aeons and ages by Jyotish, Hindu, Vedas, which is the root of astrology. These are civilizations which practiced this information and lived as creators. They lived in union with their spiritual practice, and this is where we want to move to. This is where we want to go to. And yeah, we're a long way from that because we're actually in this age, the Kali Yuga, huh? We're so far from where we see ourselves as being as spiritual co-creators. But actually, no, we're not. We're not far at all because this is all within us. And so we're told by the world that it's so far. When we look at the structures, when we have to look at the bank balance, when we realize our phone's running out of battery, these are things which are limiting. We see the limitations and they are like reminders, but we're reset. Reminders to remind us that we're limitless. We go to do the breath work. We go to the yoga. We breathe. We find the key. Because when we breathe, we can get through anything. And so we're looking at incorporating these spiritual practices into our everyday experience. We're looking to learn astrology because when we learn the astrology too, as each of us learn astrology as students of our own cosmology, we learn to grow and bring into balance each of our own energies. And then we can contribute a lot more to ourselves and each other. And so what I'm bringing into culmination is whatever you resonate with, whatever works for you, whatever you've got a passion for in this experience and you're not sure about, maybe you're feeling a bit vague, maybe you're just lacking a bit of confidence or there's some doubts. Well, I say no doubt, come in for a reading. We'll look at your chart. We'll see what eventualities are here to help you in your personal relationship with yourself, your relationship with the world, with philosophy, with astrology, with your family, with your loved ones, and we'll see how you can bring your natural innate gifts to the community and help bring around the change that allows this world to rebirth, to reblossom, to be the plant breaking through the concrete, because that structure that's been there, that's been unbreakable for this whole 700 years.
Yeah.
Because that is concrete, that is Capricorn, huh? So we're looking for something organic. We're organic, we're spiritual beings, and we're able to bring this truth with us and help heal ourselves and the world together.
There'll be a great blossoming now of unique talents, especially 2020 with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, blossoming of our talents to break through the old structures, basically, and to break through. And even though it might be tightening from the government, we're the ones at the same time that are starting a new 200-year cycle, power of the people. And
yes. So we're looking to let go of the oppression, turn off the TV and tune into ourselves, tune into our families, tune into our lovers, tune into our friends, some of which we may not have seen for a while, but especially tune into our children. Because it's a lot of us grew up in broken homes or separated families, or there were wounds in some way or another. So when we come to our children, we're actually giving them so much extra love that maybe we felt that we didn't receive, or we were able to correct something along the way which wasn't quite right for us, and we're able to give them the love they're receiving and sucking up the love that we see them to deserve. Because of course, children deserve love. And so the children of today, Pluto in Capricorn, Pluto in Aquarius, in a few, obviously in 4 or 5 years from now, they're going to be raised with love and supported in a structured manner, which gives them the opposite of Capricorn. It's given them the Cancerian emotional intelligence, which is going to lead the world. It's going to support us as older people. Our children will support us, and that's the beauty of this.
On that beautiful note, thank you so much, Philip, for contributing this very interesting information, this very positive information, actually, because it was a bit, Capricorn is a bit intense sign, and I was wondering how it might play out, but you gave us a higher perspective and a much more positive outlook for people to get more freedom, because the conjunction actually happens in Aquarius, not in Capricorn. And to start creating our own structures independently of the powers that are trying to control us, and then to take the power back in the hands of the normal people. So on that positive note, thank you so much. If you want a reading with Philip, he has, you can follow the links below, and yes, get in touch with him. And
yeah, I'd love to speak to any of you. As I say, it'd be great to I've always loved connecting with you guys, but also as we celebrate all of these videos coming out this weekend, know that this is actually the beginning of astrology coming to the forefront of these structures, so that we can all learn ourselves and each other on a more intimate basis.
The Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius starts the age of, I'd say the age of Aquarius is really starting, and Aquarius rules astrology. So astrology will become one of the primary sciences or arts of knowing ourselves. So it will become huge from 2020 onwards. So we're on the right.
Tomorrow, today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and have a follow. I think that's the last video we'll see. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.
Take care, Lada. Thank you.